Hi, I am Dana Melone, and I teach in the Cedar Rapids, Iowa area at Kennedy High School. And I have been teaching for about 18 years, and AP Psychology and other behavioral science electives have been part of my schedule for all 18 years of that teaching.
Hi everyone, my name's Codey Fickes. I teach AP Psychology. I've been teaching for 4 years at Palmyra High School in Palmyra, Pennsylvania.
All right. I am going to start by giving you guys a little bit of background on this lesson. This lesson is a 3-day lesson on cognition. And when you look at the lesson, it's broken down for different timing structures because I know various schools do things on different types of schedules. We covered 3 main areas in this lesson: cognitive processes, problem solving, and judgment involved in decision making. And within each of those areas is a really great content outline and really great activities that can be used in a number of different ways.
I worked mainly on lesson 1, which is titled Cognitive Processes Involved in Understanding Information. And lesson 1 is really all of the background information that students need to know about how our cognitive and thinking and decision-making system works. All of the concepts and prototypes and all of the ways that we mentally represent our world, that they need that information in order to go on and study and learn about some more complicated topics in cognition, like the availability heuristic, confirmation bias, and other biases and processes in judgment and decision making. I have 3 activities in my lesson. The first is just a good introduction activity. It's called Is a Hot Dog a Sandwich? Where students are going to have to just quickly argue whether or not that a hot dog fits into their category of what they consider a sandwich, or whether a hot dog is something different, which is great to then jumpstart the lesson and begin talking about concepts and the different types of concepts and how we represent our world through mental representations and concepts. And my second activity is called Name That Concept. So this can be done either at the beginning of the lesson or after talking about the different types of concepts, where students are given a list of items and they have to guess what concept they belong in. And the first set of things they get are probably things they are not as familiar with, things that might fit into multiple categories or things that they have never heard of. So they're going to struggle a bit with that first list until they work on that as much as they can, until they turn it over and see the other side of the worksheet and they see a list of information and a list of items and concepts that they're probably much more familiar with that fit into the surprise at the end is both lists. There are items that fall into the exact same categories. So for example, nephritis falls in the same category as asthma. Students are probably much more familiar with asthma as being a disease and not as familiar with the concept of nephritis, which would fall into the same concept. And my last activity in the first lesson is a commercial analysis of a commercial that's called Like a Girl, where this is a great activity to bring it all together and to kind of answer the question of, so what? Why is the study of cognition important, and why is this idea of concepts important? And it allows students to take what they've learned about the idea of a concept and our mental representations and see how it applies in the real world, and how it can then be a way to jumpstart their study of things like stereotyping and prejudice and availability heuristic and later topics by applying it to a real world setting and analyzing a commercial that involves issues of gender and sexuality, and how that is a construct of our cognition and our mental representations of the world.
Hello, my name's Cedar Riener. I am professor and chair of the Psychology and Neuroscience Department here at Randolph-Macon College. I'm eager to join you on your lesson today with your students on problem solving in cognitive psychology. I love teaching this section on problem solving, in particular because it gives students a chance to gain a window into their own mental processes. They can go from the activities of riddles or video games or laboratory tasks and see their own mental process at work and the things that change their mental processes and the things that affect their mental processes. They also can go from that to how cognitive scientists and cognitive psychologists study the mind as it solves problems. One of my favorite class activities is the remote associate task, in which students see 3 words like this: show, life, and row, and they have to decide what 4th word is associated with each of those 3 words. In this case, the answer would be boat. And students, as they look at those 3 words and think through the possible associates, they can get a sense of the mental process in which they run through the possible associates and find the answer. The nice thing about this task is that it can vary in difficulty, and it can give students a little window into which words are more associated with other words. And again, reach out to other topics in psychology and the mental process of solving problems. So thank you for your attention, and I hope that, that you and your students enjoy exploring cognitive psychology through problem solving.
The section that I worked on the most was section 3, and that section mostly looked at judgment involved in decision-making processes. And my first activity that I covered was looking at student fears, having them rank their fears, and then comparing those to the actual main causes of death in the United States. And it's a really fun activity for students to compare what they're actually scared of versus what is actually showing harm. It's a good opportunity to introduce availability heuristic, or to have them determine which of the heuristics it might be. It can also be used to collect some data and analyze data, so it can be used in a number of different ways. The second activity was a guess my pattern activity, where students are given a pattern by their teacher, and the pattern can be a number pattern, something like 1, 2, 3, 2, 4, 6 as an example. And they in turn have to guess what the pattern is and rank their percent confident. As the teacher walks around the room, you tell students if they're right or not, and then they can keep on guessing. And oftentimes their confidence level starts out really high, and as they don't get it, that confidence level starts to drop. You can start to give them hints and so forth. And it's a great example, again, to either introduce overconfidence, to have students go in and determine which problem solving and judgment error might be involved here, or collect data, use as a lab, etc. And the third activity is actually my personal favorite part of the cognition lesson plan, and it is applying the cognitive biases and other judgment and problem solving terminology to their actual school. How do they see these things happening in their school, and how can they help students and teachers overcome those types of problems? It is a great activity, again, as a review of those terms. It can be a great formative assessment. And so students can actually then in turn use it to make some differences within their school.